We will be in Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. So if you have a Bible this morning and you want to read along, you can open it and follow along. If you want to read on the screens, it'll be up on the screens. Or if you want to just listen and hear it as it is read, you can do that as well. We are in Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. I'm reading out of the New International Version. So in this, Matthew writes to us and Jesus teaches us, and in this gospel we read, "Now when Jesus came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. And a man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, 'Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean.' Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. 'Well, I am willing,' he said, 'be clean.' Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, 'See that you do not tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift of Moses commanded as a testimony to them.'" The word of God for God's people this morning. Thanks be to God. Now, at the last church I was at, I was told one Sunday after service, a lady came up to me and said, "Pastor, you talk about poop and farts more than any pastor we've ever had." I'm not sure if that's a compliment or something else, but my opening story this morning is a bathroom story. And it's not the first time I've opened with the bathroom story. I can see some of you nodding your heads remembering the last bathroom story I shared, and I had some comments about that one afterwards. But this one comes from when I was in middle school age and was on a youth trip with the middle school youth group. And as a 12-year-old boy, I probably was about 12 years old in 6th grade, my first trip with the youth group, I clogged a toilet. Now, we're at a summer camp where, I don't remember where we were. I think we were in North Carolina or something, but we're at this summer camp staying in this place, and I clogged one of the toilets. Well, I didn't know where a plunger was. So bear with me, it's going to get a little gross before it gets a little better. Because I didn't have a plunger, and I was, mind you, 12 years old, I tried to use my arm. Not a great move. Not great. I tried to unclog what was in there with my hand. Not smart. I could not fix it. I didn't know what to do, couldn't find a plunger anywhere. And so I shut the door to the stall. I locked it, crawled out underneath, and I left the bathroom hoping no one would find it, or if someone did find it, they would know what to do. But I didn't want people to think I had done it. See, I was in 6th grade. I was just starting to realize that girls like you better if you smell nice, and you shower, and if you keep yourself clean. So as a 6th grade boy, realizing, well, the girls that are on this trip with us, I don't want them to know that I'm the one who stunk up the bathroom and clogged the toilet. That would be embarrassing. So I'm just gonna close the door, gonna ignore it, act like nothing happened, wash my arm off really good so you can't smell on it, and go back about my day. Well, it wasn't too much longer after that the youth director came in and said, "Hey, so one of you clogged the toilets," and wanted to know which one had done it. Now, of course, none of us were confessing because no one did it except me, and I wasn't going to confess that I clogged the toilet. I don't even remember if the youth director or if they found a plunger and unclogged it while we were there. I'm sure they did, but I was horrified. I didn't want anyone to know that it was my mess or my smell or that I was the stinky kid who clogged the bathroom toilet. Eventually, it probably got unclogged. Who knows? But it was no longer part of me. I didn't want to be seen as the unclean kid in the youth group. I didn't want all the girls in the youth group thinking I was the smelly, unclean boy who clogged the toilet. That's the kind of something that could stick with you all the way through middle school, right? Everyone knows you as the toilet clogger. So I shut the door, I ignored it, and I moved on, hoping that either it would never be found or someone else would take care of it. Well, I think in some ways the text this morning talks about that. Maybe not about poop, but it is addressing the cleanliness and the uncleanliness as we come before God to worship. As Jesus comes off the mountain, as he finishes, last week we concluded the Sermon on the Mount, as he finishes the sermon and comes off the mountain, it says there's a large crowd with him. Now Jesus just spent, in Gospel of Matthew, he's just spent the last 3 chapters teaching. And so now there are lots of people, lots of eyeballs on him to see what he will do. Will Jesus be the teacher who talks and talks and talks and then goes about his day, or is he the teacher who's going to put up and do what he teaches others to do himself? So he comes off this mountain, and a leper comes and drops to his knees before Jesus and says, Jesus, if you are willing, you can heal me. Now, there's a lot to unpack here in what's happening. First, Jesus is now confronted with the challenge. Does he actually live into what he just taught and heal this person? Because he was just teaching about how to love and show compassion to others, how to be humble and generous, how to give of yourself and give of your time. He taught all of this in the Sermon on the Mount, so how will he respond to a man with leprosy? Now, also unpacked in here is all of the filth that goes with leprosy. Leprosy in the first century was just a kind of a catch-all term for a lot of different skin diseases. Nowadays, there's a specific disease connected to leprosy. But in the first century, if you had a rash or a skin disease or anything, it could be considered a form of leprosy. But if you go back to Leviticus chapters 13 and 14, which is where they talk about what to do with someone who has a defiling and unclean skin disease, one of the first things they talk about in Leviticus 13 is that if it just appears, if there's something red that appears on someone, they are to be removed and they are to be isolated for 7 days. If it doesn't spread, if it doesn't get worse, but it kind of fades and looks a little bit better, then they can be cleansed by the priest and brought back, and they can go about their day, go about their life. It's only if it's worse than a rash, worse than that, and it starts to spread, and it seems like it's getting worse, that then they are not just quarantined and isolated for 7 days, but they are completely removed from the community and from the society and put outside the city to be with others with deadly skin diseases. They didn't have a cure. They didn't know what to do with them. And as they would see this disease spreading on someone's arm or on their leg or on their body, as it is growing, they're concerned that this disease would spread out to others and infect anyone else who touches them or gets anywhere near them. And this wasn't just distinctly unique to Israel and to the Jewish community. This is something that was practiced in many first century cultures. The Romans also would remove people with skin diseases and place them on the outskirts of the city to quarantine them. And so if you had one of these diseases, it says in Leviticus, you are to keep your hair unkempt. You are to wear old robes, and you are to announce that you have leprosy and stay within a certain amount of distance away from people as they travel. So typically, as Jesus was traveling between these cities, as anyone would travel between the cities, you would pass by where all the lepers are kept, but they would be off and away, and they all had to notify you, hey, we're the ones with the skin diseases. Stay away from our group as you travel. We might get you sick. We might make you unclean. Now, we can see it sometimes with our 21st century goggles and say, wow, that sounds kind of harsh. But again, they had no cures. For them, it was a way to quarantine people. And there are provisions in Leviticus in chapter 14. It tells us that if the disease ever does start to dissipate, and if it ever does heal, the priest is to come and examine the individual. And if they've examined and seen that the disease has rescinded or has been cleansed or has been healed, then they can be brought back in, offer the sacrifices allotted for the cleansing. They can be ritually cleansed and purified, and they can enter the body of worship and enter the city once more. Now, on one end, it's about purity and cleanliness within the city so others don't get contaminated. And it's also about ritual and worship cleanliness and purity. That if they see the temple, if they see the worshiping community as God's holy place, and God's holy place is pure, then we want to remove anyone we see as unclean or impure from that worshiping body until, not indefinitely, but until they can be purified and cleansed and be brought back into the community. So that's the system that was in place in the first century that's baked into all of this when a leper comes and kneels before Jesus. So already we see that he's getting far closer than he's supposed to get to Jesus, because he's close enough for Jesus to reach out and touch him. We see that he's not running up announcing, "I'm a leper," but instead he runs up and says, "Jesus, if you're willing, you can heal me." And actually he doesn't even say heal. He says, the word there is to cleanse. See, we would expect, oh, I have a disease, you need to heal my disease. But Jesus here isn't even healing the disease. That's not the focus. It's that Jesus extends cleanliness and purity and wholeness. So baked into all of this is this fear that this man with leprosy is going to contaminate the community and contaminate God's holy place. And so if you are unclean and defiled and you cannot be in the worshiping community because your uncleanliness will defile all of God's holy place. So that would be the expectation. By no means would anyone ever reach out and touch someone who is unclean. And the next story that we'll address next week, baked into it, is that Jews wouldn't even go into Gentile homes because the entire home would be considered unclean. And just passing through the doorway would contaminate you. And you'd have to be removed from the worshiping community for at least 7 days before you could be cleansed by water and purified, making a sacrifice of atonement, and then you could come back in the temple to worship. That's what's baked in to all of this, is not that he's held out just because. He's held out because his uncleanliness was seen as something that could contaminate God's holiness. And so when he comes to Jesus, he falls on his knees and he says, "If you are willing." Now, Jesus, before he says any words, it says he reaches out and touches the man. Already something you would not expect to happen. Because Jesus' followers at this point might be thinking, oh, if Jesus touches him, now Jesus is going to be contaminated and unclean. Now Jesus can't go worship God in the synagogue. He has to, at least for a week, remove himself. And if a disease does not appear on his skin, if he doesn't get a rash, if he is not unclean, then he can purify and come back. But Jesus is going to be contaminated and made unclean by this man's disease. Instead, Jesus reaches out and touches him. And Jesus' cleanliness, Jesus' purity, Jesus' wholeness reaches out and cleanses the man with leprosy. It's the opposite of what they would expect to happen, the opposite of the entire way that they viewed purity and cleanliness. Instead of the disease defiling Jesus, Jesus cleanses that which is unclean. And then he says 2 words in the Greek. The first is, "I am willing," or "yes, I will," or "I can do it," which is a statement to remove doubt. To remove doubt. And the man's doubt of "if you are willing" is not a question of faith, but rather a question of insecurity. A question of, "Jesus, if you're willing to take my uncleanliness, if you're willing to take my disease." It's not a question of whether he believes Jesus can do it. It's that he doesn't find himself to be worthy of Jesus' cleansing. Every other rabbi, every other priest, every other person would just walk right on by those with leprosy, would see them with their unkempt hair and their tattered clothes, would hear them waving and shouting, "I'm a leper," and they would just keep right on walking. And so he runs up and falls to Jesus and says, "Look, Jesus, I know I'm dirty. I know I have leprosy. I know you might not want to touch my dirtiness. But if you're willing to do it, I know you can make me clean." So Jesus affirms that and says, "I am willing." Then the other word he says is "be clean," or it's a pronouncement that you are now clean. He removes the leprosy. So it's not just his words that heal, but also his touch that heals. But it's interesting to note the boldness of the man with leprosy. That the man with leprosy runs up to Jesus and falls on his knees when he's not supposed to get anywhere near travelers. The boldness to invite Jesus in to clean your filth. See, because everyone else thought that the uncleanliness would infect But instead, Jesus, who is pure, purifies. This man shows boldness that we should also show in our lives to inviting Jesus in to clean up our messes. See, dramatically in this story, instead of the leprosy rendering Jesus unclean, Jesus delivers the man from his uncleanliness, and purity flows from Jesus to those who need healing. It's not just about healing the disease. It's about making the man pure to enter and stand before God. Now, there's so much in this world that can infect us, make us unclean before God, that can pull us away from God. And there are many times in life nowadays where people might say to you that you're perfect just the way you are, but you're not. That might not be comfortable to hear. You might not like hearing that this morning, but you're not perfect just the way you are. Neither am I. None of us are perfect. But the thing is, that's okay, because Jesus wants to take that imperfection upon himself. We are not perfect, so we cannot stand before God justified and say to God, I am perfect, so you should let me in. Instead, none of us are perfect, and none of us are worthy of standing before God on our own. But Jesus is God. Jesus is purity. Jesus is cleanliness, and Jesus is wholeness. And with Jesus, and by his blood, it doesn't matter if we're perfect. What matters is if we allow him to come in and cleanse us by his blood, we can stand before God because we have Jesus with us. So the example of the clogged toilet and the messy bathroom. There are lots of different ways we might go about trying to unclog our own clogged toilets. And something I said in Bible study this week, which I was maybe told not to repeat. I said oftentimes when we think about everyone being perfect just the way you are, is we all think our farts don't smell. But in Jesus, he wants us to realize everyone's farts smell just as bad as everyone else's. Sometimes they smell a little bit worse depending on what we eat. But everyone's fart smells. But in Jesus, that can be removed and we can be cleansed. With our dirty bathroom that we shut the door and lock because we don't want anyone going down there because we don't know how to fix it. We don't know what to do. I mean, we all probably have. I know we have at home a junk closet that we're not sure what to do with some of the stuff. And so we throw it in, and maybe we set a rule of after 10 years, maybe we'll go back in, or 5 years, or a year, 6 months, and we'll throw it out. We have all these junk closets, and we shut the door, and we close it, and we lock it because we don't want anyone to see that mess, and we hope that that mess never comes back up again. So it is with the bathroom and the clogged toilet, and there might be lots of ways we go about trying to dissipate that. Maybe you spray some Febreze, or you light a candle, hoping that, no one will go down to that bathroom because they won't smell it because I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to lock the door so if anyone does come, they can't get in. And I'm just going to hope that no one ever even notices that room is even over there. But sometimes that toilet comes back up in our lives at the least opportune time if we completely ignore it. Perhaps we seek out a plumber thinking, they'll fix it. Or maybe we go to a friend and say, hey, did you ever have a clogged toilet at your house? What did you do about it? I just can't seem to get it. A plunger wouldn't work. Nothing is working for me. So maybe you go to a friend. Maybe you go to YouTube or to Google, or you find a book, Plumbing for Idiots, and you try to figure out how to fix it yourself. But all of these ways are not really trying to unclog the toilet. It's just trying to figure out how to dissipate the mess ourselves. But we can never truly get rid of that. And so maybe, like me, you were worried that people would smell it. Maybe you were worried that the smell would get on you and get into your clothes, and people would smell it on you and would think that you're gross and you're contaminated and you're unclean and you're smelly, and maybe people wouldn't want to be around you. Maybe you're concerned that others, if they come too close to your closet or to your bathroom, that they might start smelling like your poop as well. Maybe you're concerned that might contaminate others if you let them get too close to your closet. But the thing is, with Jesus, he wants to go in, fix the clog. And not only fix the clog, what plumber would also go in and clean the bathroom? Disinfect every inch of it. Make it clean and brand new. See, that's what Jesus wants to do if we're only willing to unlock the door and be bold enough to invite him in to our bathroom. The room, the space in your heart, the space in your life, you don't let anyone else go because you're embarrassed or you're worried of what they might think of you if they go into that room, or you're concerned that your badness or your poop or your filth or your stink will make them smell as well if they come in. And so you look for other ways to fix the toilet on your own. And you're really just focusing on how do I fix this clog? How do I fix the toilet? When instead Jesus wants to come in and says, I'm going to flush it, I'm going to unclog it, and I'm going to clean your entire room so it is spotless. See, the leper comes and bows on his knees to Jesus and says, if you're willing. Jesus said just towards the end of the Sermon on the Mount, ask, seek, knock. Seek it out. Come and find me, and I'll be revealed to you. Ask, and I'll do it. And here we see the leper coming and asking. And Jesus responds by reaching out and touching, by entering into that uncleanliness, by entering into that dirty room and cleaning it out so that this man can stand clean before God. Are we willing to be bold and open the doors of our bathrooms for Jesus? Are we bold and willing to open the junk closet and say, Jesus, can you come in and help me organize and sort and clean this mess? Because I'm not sure what to do with it right now. I'm not sure where to put it or how to sort it or how to organize it. I don't know how to fix a toilet. I don't know how to fix this leak. I don't know what to do. Are you bold enough to be willing to say, Jesus, I'm at the end of myself and I'm not sure what to do with this. So will you come in and help make me clean? All too often, it's too easy for us to just close that door and ignore it. Whatever that mess may be in your life, and we distract ourselves with social media or TV or music or all kinds of other things. We distract ourselves to try to forget that that room was ever even there. Now, my friend has a saying he uses all the time. My friend Manny always says, don't bleed on those who didn't cut you. Because all too often we let that dirty closet or that mess or something else overflow and spill out at inopportune moments on people who are trying to help us because we've just tried to ignore it. What I'm saying to you this morning is that dirty closet, that mess in your life, I can't tell you what it is for you. I only know what my mess is, my deepest, darkest mess. But are you willing to let Jesus in? Because all he needs is for you to unlock the door and leave it open and invite him in. And he will come into that room and he will make it clean. He won't just fix what's broken, but he will also get on his hands and knees and scrub until everything is spotless. But you have to be willing to let him in. You have to be willing, you have to be bold like this man with leprosy in chapter 8 of Matthew. You have to be bold to run up to Jesus and fall on your knees in prayer and say, Jesus, help me. I can't clean this mess up on my own. I've ignored it for the last 20 years or however long. I've ignored this piece of me that's in here that I don't want anyone to see because I'm embarrassed of what they might think. I heard a sermon once. They were preaching and they said, the problem is so many of us think that we're saved by God and that we've given our lives to Christ. But there's still those little things. And they said, what are those things in your life where if you were up here, for me as a pastor, if I were up here preaching, what are the things that if they were put up on the screen while I was preaching, I'd be embarrassed or I'd be worried about, or I would say, no, you can't know about that. They say, rather, when you've truly been cleansed by Jesus, that could be put up there and you just say, yeah, that was behind me. Jesus has made me clean. Jesus has made me pure. I'm not embarrassed by that anymore. because Jesus has taken it away. Has Jesus helped you to clean out your closet yet? Has he helped you to clean up your bathroom, to clean up your mess and make it pure and clean and whole? And I'd argue to you that none of us are perfect, so there's probably still some work to be done. So be bold. Be willing to invite Jesus in to clean up your mess. And walk forward with him so you don't have to worry about making new messes. See, we all have a messy bathroom, so just start to open the door. Maybe the first step is to just leave it unlocked. Pray to Jesus and just say, God, this room is unlocked to you. I don't know what to do with it, but it's unlocked, so you help me. As he says, ask, seek, knock, to pursue it, and he will respond. So pray this week. Sit in silence with God when you have the chance and pray and say, God, I'm opening this closet to you. Help me clean it up. Are you willing to be bold? Are you willing to invite him in and let him in so he can get to work on the little pieces that you don't want anyone else to see? Are you willing to allow him to make you clean? The question was, Jesus, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Start praying that this week. Maybe you're not even aware of what the closet is right now. So maybe just start saying this prayer over and over again. Jesus, if you're willing, you can make me clean. If we ask, he will answer. Or if you doubt, read through the Gospels, and before you read, pray and say, Jesus, reveal yourself to me. Jesus, if you are real, make yourself known to me. Jesus, if you are real, let me see who you are and where you are in this world. And then once you know him, then say, and Jesus, I know that you're real, so if you are willing, make me clean. And he is willing. Unlock the door to your closet. Unlock the door to your broken and dirty bathroom. Let him in so he can clean it and fix it. The areas in your life you're embarrassed and you don't want anyone to see. Let him in so he can get to work fixing and cleaning your broken bathroom. May the Lord add a blessing to your understanding today. May God help you hear what God wants to say to you this morning. May God fill you with peace and cleanse you so you can stand before God